how do you think in systems? Teach me how to think like you do, or I know you'll have a system for this. I know you'll have a process or a template. And there's a part of me that would have a lot of fun doing a podcast, sort of really zoned in on this thing that I love. But I get
Are you
insecure.
proposing a merger?
No, I'm just saying
Do you want to be a co-host of the Automate and Grow podcast?
I'll co-host some episodes with
Will
you.
you?
That'd be fun. We should do a pilot.
Why don't we do one a month?
Yes, let's do
serious.
it.
Let's do it.
That would be so fun. Okay.
This is another episode of the Automate and Grow podcast. My guest today was nominated by Dorie Clark, and it's Jenny Blake, the author of Pivot, and she also has a podcast by the same name, right, Jenny?
I do, Pivot with Jenny Blake.
Awesome. I'm really excited that you're here. Appreciate you taking the time to jump on and chat.
Thank you for having me, Michael. I appreciate it. Listeners and watchers, you won't know Michael was super flexible. I got to interview one of my heroes today. 5 years of anticipation, and I finally had the courage. And then, of course, those interviews, I don't know if you've experienced this, Michael, are like me at my most awkward. So,
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I joke. I call it the awkward show. When it's not called Pivot, it's called the awkward show with Jenny Blake.
Are you going to introduce it as the awkward episode?
I think so. I probably should. Like there's some stuff before we officially hit record, and I said, my friends joke, because the more I stretch to find a guest that I really resonate, and this is an artist, Nako, in Medicine for the People. His name's Nako. His music has been the soundtrack to my life for the last 5 years. I told him it'd be embarrassing if I got the Spotify stats. And yeah, so just me at my awkward finest. But that's the only way to have a podcast, I think. You have to put up with imperfection and awkwardness.
So first of all, Nako is the name of the artist, and why
Yes.
is he your hero?
His music is this mix of deep introspection and personal growth and spiritual themes, spiritual, not religious, and at the same time, very politically oriented and social justice advocacy. He's Native American, part Filipino, part Puerto Rican. So his whole heritage is blending cultures, and his music is it's very uplifting. It's unique. It's really special. It's uplifting at the same time that it is meaningful and important. And I think for the times that we're living in, for the year that is 2020, it's his new album's called Take Your Power Back, which is quite fitting.
Oh, interesting. Because most of the albums I'm seeing are talking about keep 6 feet away from me and wash your hands.
And wear a mask.
And wear a mask.
The
and
masks
now,
that we wear.
That just wasn't good enough. We had to get into like social strife.
I know. What's next? I mean, we have 5 months still to the election. So the chaos will only further from here, get deeper. And I think we're going to see so much. The goal is going to be confusion one way or another from now until the election.
Totally. It's totally confusion. It's like it's interesting you said that. We won't go deep political, but I find it as an observational person, humorous to me, that I see politics as kabuki, right? It's just all theater for our attention, like anything
totally
else. But this is like the ultimate game of power, which is like, it's the Game of Thrones, right? Like we got
That's true. Oh my gosh. You're the first person that said it that way. We are in the Game of Thrones.
It's just not as good. It's just not as good. From the inside, it's like, you guys are weird. I don't know.
And we have a Danny season 8 in Office, Danny season 8, episode 4. Like,
oh yeah.
I don't know which exact episode, but
wait, who's going to get eaten? Who's going to get killed by their lover?
Good question.
I don't know,
but one of my favorite Game of Thrones quotes is Baelish, which was about like life is a chaos ladder. You got to climb. I don't know. I need to find this now. This is where we need a producer to just like go tell me what this quote is.
What's that?
A producer for a podcast?
Yeah,
I know. Wouldn't that be a nice luxury?
Is he busy? He seems
Nako's now on a road trip, I think.
Man, tell him to call in and we can like get him to like clean up this whole mess.
Hey, he's doing his part. He's on it. He is on it. I mean, the band is called Nako and Medicine for the People. So at least he's providing the medicine to even attempt to get through these times.
Is his entire tour in Washington State?
What'd you say? Is his entire tour?
Yeah.
Well, his tour got canceled.
Oh, what? Oh,
Yeah.
man, that's
Here,
gotta
little
fix that.
finger, Baelish. Chaos isn't a pit. Chaos is a ladder. Many who try to climb it fail and never get to try again. The fall breaks them. And there's one more line of this that's very epic.
Wait, was that prophetic? Because didn't he go? He threw what's her name's mom down like the pit. Is that what he was referencing?
I don't know. I don't remember what season it was. He says,
I gotta look for that now.
I know. Are we editing this? Because the last line is even better, though. Hold on.
We're
Now I'm at
definitely
a site
not.
called fandom.com.
Oh boy.
Chaos is a ladder. Hold on. Okay. Let me get this clean. Chaos isn't a pit. Chaos is a ladder. Many who try to climb it fail and never get to try again. The fall breaks them. And some are given a chance to climb. They refuse. They cling to the realm or to the gods or love. Illusions. Only the ladder is real. The climb is all there is.
So what does that say to you, Jenny, as the queen of pivot?
Thank you for this title of Queen of Pivot. You know, the motto I came up with while working on Pivot is, if change is the only constant, let's get better at it. And I knew that if I wrote a book and studied that change, the nature of change, and specifically as individuals, how do we become more agile and more resilient to change? So this idea that the ladder is all there is, I think that's really the truth to life, and especially career and business. Whatever revenue targets, business metrics, goals, I mean, all of those are a single point in time. The chaos is the climb. It is the ladder. It's like, that is our day to day. And so that Baelish quote stood out to me because
Totally.
it's kind of, it's embracing the climb. The climb is all there is.
Well,
But I might just throw the ladder down sideways, so it's more of a,
no, so it's funny because we were talking before we jumped on, and from a personal point of view, I was at a weird point last year where I was like, I missed the boom. I didn't miss it, like I did a lot, but it wasn't what I thought in my brain I should have, which is normal because I have stupid ideas that are over here. We write books, we do
and what
podcasts, we
does
do
it mean
crazy
to miss
stuff.
the boom? What made you feel like you had missed it?
Well, part of being successful, I believe, overall, is predicting the future. And I think you can take technology and you can see how they converge and see trends. And I was right about a bunch of stuff. But that doesn't mean, sometimes you get caught up in other things and you don't go triple down, 10x down, 100 down, because you go back, you think about, okay, well, how will I recognize opportunity in the future? What did I learn from my past, which is in 2010, what did I know then? And what did I say? And what happened? And that's kind of, you hit that 10-year mark, right? So I think I was at the end of 2019, like, wow, this could have been so much bigger. I created small, dinosaur brain problems for myself. And I was just like, man, if I could go back even 2 years, I would have doubled down on what I was doing. I would have been fine, which I was fine. It's not that I wasn't fine, but you have an idea in your head, right?
I know what you
Now
mean.
here we
I was
are. The
right.
ladder has presented itself yet again.
And boy, is this a chance in a year to climb. I can relate to what you said because I had said Pivot came out 2016. I started working on it 2013. So talk about, the lean startup, Eric Ries. I mean, he really popularized the idea of pivot for startups and small businesses. But I feel like, okay, I saw this coming for everybody else and how career pivots and this notion of
Mm-hmm.
career change happening every few years and much more frequently than in the past. And I was like, okay, 2020 is going to be the year for Pivot. This is when it's going to hit a tipping point. And I paid upfront to put Pivot in airport bookstores, which,
Oh, wow.
pro tip listeners, that isn't free. Those aren't like
Right.
beautifully curated by airport booksellers. No, pay to play. You
No.
pay to have your book in the airport bookstore. But I did it. I paid upfront. I paid to attend the TED 2020 in Vancouver,
Oh, you went
and I
hardcore.
paid upfront. I said, I'm going to redo my speaking reel. I paid up front. I did so many things to like go big on Pivot 2020. And then sure enough, all my speaking gigs got canceled. In March, I lost 90% of my revenue. And
Uh,
sure enough, it is in fact the year of Pivot.
yeah.
And everybody's talking about pivoting left and right, up, down, and sideways. is there the tipping point for the book or the podcast that I was looking for? Not yet. I mean, the story's not over, but it's just fascinating that I was in a way like kind of felt just similar to you, felt like there's some wave to ride here, there's something to catch, and yet we have so little control over how that actually unfolds.
Well, so what's funny is for me, if I really also look back on my personal, secret methodology of things, when I look back to that point where I was like, maybe kind of mad at myself, I was also de-invested in a bunch of stuff. I had exited stuff well before, and then there was like another run, but then all that stuff got slammed again. So it was like it was an opportunity to say, like, is this still worth getting into? Who's going to win the next 10 years? And so for me, it was like, cool, I'm okay. Like my methodology is, here's chaos. I see 10 feet in front. I'm just going to keep going. I'm not going
So
to get
give us some more
distracted, right?
specifics, because I often say with pivoting, you have to say no to the good. There's a John Maxwell quote: "You have to say no to the good so you can say yes to the best." And I'm wondering specifically, what did you let go of in the last few years, and how do you read into the future? What do you see coming? Let us in on your
Great
secret
question.
methodology a little bit.
No.
Come on, knock knock. What's in
So,
there?
okay, so I'm actually writing a second book, which I vowed I would never do again. So the first book was Automate and Grow. I slammed it together in 45 days and then did my best to get an editor that would do an okay job, which it's never done, right? But I released it. And then obviously that's the platform for this. The next book really says this. Automate and Grow basically says build digital products, create systems to, try to smooth out the bumps and duplicate yourself. Like, you're not the break point, right? The next book's called Form Your Own Pack. And the idea behind that, first off, is predict the future, looking at exponential technologies and how they create trends, and then do something that rides one of them or more of them. That's the first thing. So whether that's digital products, synthetic biology, digital medicine, 3D printing, like all the Peter Diamandis stuff, right? So it's like, okay, get on a wave. And that's why I say, I was kind of like, okay, well, I kind of missed some stuff, but now we got these next 6 things that are going to blow up, right? So the first thing is be part of what's going to happen. The second part is then the idea behind Form Your Own Pack is, again, how do you duplicate yourself again? So get beyond just one system in, sales, marketing, and support and product. How do you participate in many ventures, and how do you all rise together? And so the idea is, I took the Japanese Keiretsu model. I don't know if you know what that is.
I don't, but I'm loving this.
It's amazing that, and this shouldn't be about me. It should probably be about Pivot. But so my methodology that I'm about to really kind of take to the next level is form your own pack of cooperative ventures. And that means I use digital technology and systems, obviously, in my business to attack one problem in one of those exponential areas. But then I want cooperative ventures that we have cross shareholdings in, some cross revenue, and we share technology, talent, data, and relationships. And that's the methodology. And after, I want to help 1 million entrepreneurs do stuff to start impactful ventures in small ways, which is like, there's a free startup and grow course, get the book, do a 6-week online accelerator. But my real end game is, I think that I want to participate in 300 ventures that I can impact in that way, right? As an advisor, and help them get the resources they need and work together to do that. So that's kind of my 10-year plan.
I love it. I love it.
Is that insane, or?
It's so awesome. It's so much good stuff in there. I love the idea of trend spotting is not easy, but it's so rewarding when you can tune into that. And it sounds like you have a real gift for it. And then I love this idea of how do you replicate yourself, and how do you create an ecosystem, your pack of businesses that work well together and that build on each other. I love it. It's so good.
That's the methodology. So
Wow.
now that, now it's
You heard it
execution,
here
obviously,
first.
but yeah, well, maybe not, but yeah. I mean, maybe a lot of people heard it first, or nobody did. I don't know.
No, that's true.
So my problem right now is finishing the book part.
I know.
It's like,
It's
it's so painful.
It sounds like you're probably similar to me. I've written two. I like having written a book. I don't enjoy writing it. I mean, I try to enjoy it, and one of my mantras, let it be easy, let it be fun. And I certainly like getting organized for it, but I'm not one of those romantic writers that I just like
Mm.
can't wait to sit in front of the computer and type away. I just like the ideas, and then I'll write the book if I feel I have big enough original ideas.
I find what I do is because I have a brute force method of writing.
Sounds like it. Like you really do a sprint. You just
Very much so, yeah. Because I think that's probably
rip
part
the
of my brain.
band-aid.
Just do it, and it's like create. I have a method, right? It's like here's my outline, here's the big ideas, fill in the blanks, so to speak. But I think when people read that first version, it's like, okay, there's no story here. So then it's almost like I gotta go back and tell the story, which is weird. It's maybe in reverse, and maybe that's the downfall of my method.
We're so similar because it is that systems thinking that I like to just convey. Here's what you do. Here's the method. Here's the system or the process. Here are the
Yeah,
steps. And then the feedback I always got on my book, where are the stories? From the time it was in a proposal state till the final draft, it was, we need more stories. We need a story for this. And I'm like, who needs all these stories? And then, of course, the
everybody.
readers who said they actually like the book said, oh, I loved all the stories. Oh, and
That's
stories are what really
I
bring it
know.
home. But my mind, just like you, thinks in systems, not
Yeah.
stories. I have to work so hard to try to find all those examples.
So in Pivot, what's the big story? Or what other stories? But what story would jump out at me? Or do you not have
See,
any because you never
now you're asking
it?
me to like write left-handed, right? Like recall a story. No, no one's asked me that though in 4 years of interviews. What story jumps out? Wow. Well, I'll tell you one story. I had a coaching client who was a very successful engineering director at a very well-known tech company. He'd been there 10 years and he was hitting a plateau. And he was had a wife and 3 kids. So it's not just one of these things. The whole point of my book is most people are not um, that risk oriented. A lot of people are more risk averse, especially when
Sure.
it comes to career change. And this person was so bright, but he felt so stuck. And then, well, at one point in our coaching, he told me, oh, yeah, I studied knot theory as a PhD. He started a PhD in knot theory and mathematics. And I had this light bulb moment for him. I'm like, you studied knot theory? Do you see this knot? This is a career knot. And the same way that you can untangle mathematical knots, you have what you need. And so much of the story of pivot and pivoting is we're pivoting more often than not,
Mhm.
especially in 2020. There is no there. And really, when you get better at it, it's a continuous pivot. That in fact, the pivot points become less sharp and jarring, and it's more of a continuous what's working, what's out there, what can I try? And I forgot one piece of that. What's working? What does success look like? What's out there? What can I try? And so for this person, just seeing that he had the skills and that he could shift his thinking a little bit was really empowering for him. And sure enough, he ended up finding a startup that was in an earlier stage and a
Oh,
more
cool.
fringe product and fringe industry, which is what he loved. He didn't want to be in the bureaucracy of a big organization. And that's an example too, where oftentimes in the startup world, pivots are plan B. Something has gone wrong and the business needs to pivot in order to stay afloat. But when I talk to people, so often their pivots are a product of their success. That in fact, the thing they did worked, or they got
Right.
where they wanted, or they got the role they wanted, and then they outgrew it. And instead of blaming ourselves for outgrowing whatever previous role or part of our business, it's actually a good thing. So you're at a pivot
Hmm.
point, and the people who are high net growth are going to hit these pivot points more often. And certainly now with the global pandemic, I mean, we all got pivoted. So whether you were planning it or not, we're all being asked to pause and take stock and say, well, how do we want to carve the path forward?
Interesting. What a great story, first of all. Congratulations.
Thank you. I worked very hard for that one.
um, I think what's nice about that story, by the way, as feedback, is that and I'm trying to learn about, I know I have the capability of telling stories. I can talk, and we can just spin. But it's weird when I write, it's this other brain, right? For me. But what I like about your story is it's very relatable because it's a person and it was like personal. It's almost like Thomas Wolfe, right, in the electric Kool-Aid acid test, or Ken Kesey, right? And it's like he's first person journaling through a revolution. So that's kind of what your story is like. It's like first personing. I love that. I have to make sure that I think that's the other problem. I don't inject enough person into that into my writing.
So I keep an anecdote file that when something interesting or meaningful happens, I just jot down a little anecdote in Evernote, because otherwise, again, just like you, I would forget that these moments ever happened. So, for example, here's a story that I've not used yet, but I know it's going to fit somewhere, which is off-brand Minnie Mouse. I was walking through Times Square, and one of the characters, she's dressed up as Minnie Mouse, and she was chasing people down to hug them. This is pre-pandemic when you could still hug people. And people were freaked out. They were like, get off of me. So she's like aggressively trying to hug passersby. And then she lifts up her head. So then the head of Minnie is like sort of hanging off, and she's like drinking water or something. And I was thinking, this Minnie Mouse is not on brand. This is very jarring to see Minnie Mouse like hug harassing passersby. And what is that a metaphor for? Like, what is this a metaphor for in our business, or times that we're trying to force something, or I don't know. It was just like this
But
interesting anecdote, but if I
what
didn't
she was
capture
on
it, I
was
don't know.
MDMA.
Yeah, yeah,
She was on ecstasy. I have bad news for you, Jenny.
right.
That's why she was lifting the help to drink water and
It
hug
was almost like it
everybody.
was less as if she was on MDMA. It was more like a desperation.
Oh,
Like
wow.
she wanted the tips so badly that she was chasing
Oh,
people down for hugs.
maybe.
And that energy, it's like imagine trying to do business as an aggressive Minnie Mouse. It just doesn't work. Like your brand, that's not your brand. You need to be loving and positive. And it was more of this energy. I mean, you're right. When I tell the story, it could easily be MDMA, but
For
my
sure.
vibe when I was watching it happen was more like just like,
Off-brand.
yeah, off-brand Minnie
I like
Mouse. That's
that.
the title of the anecdote.
Off-brand Minnie Mouse. That could be like a whole chapter in your next book.
I know. See, there's something
So
that could come
good.
from it, but it requires just grabbing these little stories in the moment.
So that's a great idea. I've been using Keep a lot, the
Cool.
Google Keep app. And then, this is the first phone I actually love.
Nice.
The Samsung Note. And so, pro tip, I actually dictated a lot of this book into the note. And then, of course, you got to clean up all the difference between writing and talking. But super useful because you just do speech to text on this thing and it spits out files.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Robert
So,
Greene dictated a lot of his
did
books.
he?
Yeah.
Oh,
Big,
interesting.
big
Okay.
dictator. Dictator.
He's a dictator. That's a bad.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Have you heard of, because I know you might must geek out on software too. Have you used Descript?
No. What's
So if
these?
anyone out there podcasts, as you're speaking, it transcripts. It creates a transcript live of the audio as you're saying it, machine done, of course. And then there's no like fairies sitting in the computer, but it's a machine done transcript while you're recording. And then this is the craziest part. You can edit the audio by simply moving words in the text. And if you have filler words, like you can just delete them in the transcript and it deletes from the audio.
Oh,
It's
neat.
wild.
That's really, so it's called Descript.
Descript,
As
DE
like,
script.
so it's like unscript
Kind of. And
a
it's
little bit.
cloud based. So you could even have a team member in there cleaning up the transcript while you're recording. I mean,
Okay, that's
it's
cool.
wild. It's a
That's really
game
interesting.
changer. Yeah, I've just started learning it. And the other piece of software that I sense is really going to change things is Notion. But I'm such a long-term Evernote user that I haven't made the switch yet, but I'm seeing very powerful
So what
uses
is it?
of
What is
Notion.
Notion?
Notion.so. It is like Evernote plus Asana plus task management plus Notes app combined. Any one note can have so many different formats within it. You could have a Kanban board, you could have a checklist, you could have article thumbnails. I mean, it's wild how much you can put in one, I'm going to say quote document, because
Yeah,
it's really pushing, like Google Docs
I like it.
doesn't come close to what this is. And so we don't even have a concept for this type of multi-purpose placeholder keeper. But I think for a lot of people, it's gonna start replacing Evernote, which is interesting from an incumbent innovation standpoint. Like Twitter is just now launching voice clips,
Right.
but it's like, Evernote has struggled. It's tough. I'm reading the story No Filter right now, the book about the origins of Instagram.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
yeah, I find it very interesting how companies innovate or not. I know there's innovator's dilemma as well. But you must look at this. Like, I mean, I'm curious your take on businesses. How do people, I don't know, how do you,
Get out
there's
of
a, Like disrupt yourself, basically.
Like as an individual or as
Well,
a
as an
as an
individual or as a
organization?
business, or either way. I mean, I know there's a lot out there in the business and entrepreneurship space on this kind of topic, but I'm curious your take on it. When does a business know, or when do you know when it's time to either leave something behind or really put a fresh new spin on it?
It's a good question, right? And I think the problem, first of all, for a lot of businesses is that entrepreneurs, we all wrap our personality around a business. I think that's mistake number one. So we
That's
get,
so true.
emotionally tied to this thing and the outcome,
That's
and
true.
it's a screw up every time you do that. And in part, that pure grunt factor and the fact that this is your identity does allow entrepreneurs to propel things forward in spite of their limitations. So normal people don't have that distortion zone. They're thinking of why they can't, and entrepreneurs don't care. Like the most extreme ones, right? I mean, you'll look at the most extreme is obviously Elon Musk, and people like marveled at him, but all the guy, he just doesn't care. He's just going to do the thing, right? And I think there's an element of that in most really impactful entrepreneurs and ventures, which is start figuring out why you can. Right? So I think the mistake that you make though is that people think, oh, well, you never transition to management, and sometimes you don't know when to quit because you're so emotionally tied to seeing this thing happen. So I think you have to have that objectivity where you can separate yourself from the business first of all, and you look at it as a thing. Is this trend still ongoing? Is it going to double again? Is my thing really in a competitive Me Too spot, or am I doing something unique? And I think back to, I have referenced a couple times Peter Thiel's 0 to 1, because he says make your own monopoly, and it's not about anything other than having your own unique sliver that allows you to grow. So if you're not growing, you got to figure out why. And if it's because of the overall solution you're offering or the market, then maybe it's time to decide, do you really want to be in that or not? Doesn't mean it's not a viable business. Maybe you sell it, maybe you spin it off and automate it. And I think that's part of my motivation of Automate and Grow, which is be able to put systems in there and separate yourself from it, because you'll have a lot more objectivity about what to do with the thing.
I love this. This is gold. So well said. And
Thanks.
you kind of reminded me, I know it's your podcast, but I can't help but ask
Our
you a
It's our
follow-up
podcast,
question.
Jenny.
Okay, great. And I think Pivot podcast listeners would really enjoy this one too. I want to ask you a question about podcasts because there's now over 1 million podcasts. We saw the Joe Rogan Spotify deal, and now
Yep.
Spotify just gave Kim Kardashian a deal.
Did they?
Things are changing.
Oh
Yes,
man, that's
right? So
okay.
they're in a major talent grab. There's a lot of innovation happening. There's also a lot of new shows entering the market, and especially a lot of big, well-funded players. So every news platform, every celebrity is going to have a podcast. And I think that's going to make it harder for Joe Schmo or Jane
Yeah,
Doe like me
for sure.
to have just a regular interview show. It's going to be, I even think about my podcast, Pivot Podcast. It's probably too general. It's probably too many things to too many people. And I don't think that's going to work moving forward. And I wonder what advice you would give as you see the podcast landscape shifting. And I think listeners can probably extrapolate that to whatever creative endeavors or
Anything,
business that
right?
they're thinking about.
For
How
sure.
would you think about, do you think that at this point, once the big kahunas get in the water, do we need to niche down even further? How do you think about that to actually go find what seems like a smaller market or more specific? And I often have a fear of
Two things.
segmenting so much, I feel constricted that I'm not
Well, that
inspired
is
by
my
it.
fear always, right? And I think
Yeah.
so I had John Lee Dumas on the podcast, and John Lee Dumas is the OG of podcasters, and he's built a
Yes.
business that's pretty enviable. Like he does, I think 300 grand a month now, or 250 is his number, because he publishes his number too, right? And I asked him, like, if you had to start over right now, like, what would you do different? He goes, it's niche, 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 niche. And that was the 100% the answer from him. And it made me think of my own thing of why people watch this. I self-indulge. I talk
I
to
do
people
too.
that I think are smart and
Yeah.
interesting, and I want to get ideas out there. And it's not always about tools and tactics. But I think that I need that element. So I'm trying to separate those two out a little bit, which is there's the Automate and Grow YouTube to address that. And I want this to be just my platform to get attention, in a sense, to really good ideas and people that are doing cool things, right? Because, I don't want to give that up. It's selfish, but
Well, and it's interesting of when we're talking about a niche and an audience, and then the topics that are joyful to you as the host or people,
Mhm.
it's almost like this. I don't even think chicken and the egg is the right metaphor, almost like a watering hole in the desert, and then the animals who are coming to this watering hole. But I wonder if you start with a very niche specific thing and that's your core, and therefore you can attract people because of that core. And
That's
then you, the host, get to go play on the edges and have fun, but you still have a core. Whereas if somebody starts out trying to dance around the entire edge or perimeter, it's not going to work.
maybe, and I think that it's a really good question because, you know, I wonder that. I don't want to give up the thing that I'm doing, and maybe it's just not on brand. So, I think that's a decision that I'm gonna have to make, which is I'm having great conversations with people, and I don't know that everybody knows that's happening,
Right. I
right?
liked your descriptions, very specific though. It's like Automate and Grow shows you a step-by-step way to create a custom digital strategy to transform how your business attracts, acquires, and keeps customers. And I thought, that's really specific.
It is,
It's good. It's like create a custom digital strategy is already so specific, but good. It's wide as well. You're not just saying, I'm talking to entrepreneurs and we're having a blast.
yeah, exactly. But to that point on the podcast, am I doing that?
You are actually doing that.
You think so?
No, I'm asking you,
I don't think so.
which
Well,
part you don't think so?
so I think if you look at the people like I'm having conversations with, some of them are authors. I did a podcast for 2.5 hours with Daryl Davis, who had 200 people leave the KKK,
Oh, wow.
right? So it's not strictly about automation and growth in the sense of what the theme of the book is, right?
Yeah.
So, and the only reason I bring it up is because I think what you're hitting on is that you probably do need to be niche and be consistent with what you're presenting and what the brand is. And I probably am not, and maybe it holds that back.
But you know what it did do? As soon as I saw Automate and Grow, I thought, oh, yes, I love systems. I love thinking about how to
Oh,
automate
okay.
things and grow. So you're right that it's almost the niche, the title and description are just going to get, so it's like a fishing lure.
Maybe.
And that's going to get me to subscribe because I think Automate and Grow, yes, who doesn't want to geek out on that? And then you get to put those interviews that are just meaningful to you and find the themes. But I also think, don't you think, especially with a podcast, I call it put yourself in the path of pivot. I feel that my podcast, the very nature of the interviews and the guests and where my curiosity is taking me, it's as if it's shaping the next book before I'm even aware of what that book is.
Maybe.
And in a way, it allows, I almost will reverse engineer my way into a future topic. And I wonder if something like a podcast is so inherently organic
Maybe.
that it probably does need to change at some
Maybe.
point. I don't know if you can, it's like a
So
snake shedding its skin, it
I,
sheds the old layer, it's naked for a little bit, and then the new skin grows.
so how famous do you want to be?
Oh, what did I say? I want to be known among nerds.
Okay, well,
That's my
it's at
goal.
least
Like, as in, I
13%
don't
of
need
the
to be,
population.
Tim Ferriss wrote a fantastic article on like 10 or 11 reasons not to be famous. And
Mm,
that scared the daylights out of me
it
of like
should.
all the problems that come with that.
It's a lot.
But, among a certain group of people or among like people in the know or people that love books, love reading, love technology, love entrepreneurship, it'd be cool to have enough name recognition and grow the platform to a point where doors open, but not so swinging open that I'm some kind of celebrity that can't, have a normal life.
So that's a great answer because I think that points me again towards probably how disciplined you have to be in big in a niche. Because it's hard enough to get
Mm,
attention. I could produce content like all day long because I enjoy it, right?
right.
That doesn't mean that people are consuming it or that it's consistent with the message that they are lured in by, right? So I think after talking to John Lee Dumas again, it was like, okay, how do I address this? I asked several people if I should change the name of the podcast, and the overwhelming response was no.
Do
So
you
I'm
know what
like,
you would have
okay, well,
changed it to?
there goes that idea. I have no
Do you
idea.
know
It
what you would have changed it to?
was funny because I had this thing, and I don't think that's necessarily the right name, but I had like the Daily Growth Show, which was a
Okay.
1-minute daily show. And they're just like things that I read, ideas, and how to, either automate your business or grow your mindset or your business, one of the two, right? And that the overwhelming response is, no, that sounds like Oprah. I'm like, well, that's not me.
I had a lot of fun. I was doing daily for 3 months when the pandemic
For
really
you? Oh, that's
started to hit. It was fun. I love the idea of daily where you can become part of somebody's daily routine, morning routine, evening routine.
totally.
Um, how famous do you want to be
I don't.
at all?
Ah, I want to do whatever the hell I want.
Okay.
And I'm not interested in anybody's input.
I get it.
I just want
I
the
get
thing
it.
to work and I want it to help other people. But, I'm not interested in fame from the point of view of, um, there's a lot of diverging opinion. It's just a distraction in my mind. So I don't have any lust for fame. As a matter of fact, I would, if I come up with anything in the next 10 years, one of the things will be some way to have an avatar.
Yeah, I get it. Daniel Pink is someone I've often looked to since 2012. I thought I like what Dan Pink's got going on. Like he's known among nerds, total future thinker. I don't know if anyone outside of our
Knows who
business
that
or
is.
yeah, maybe a few would be like, oh yeah, I read, didn't he write To Sell Is Human? They wouldn't know all his books. They would maybe know his name. It's always funny to me when I encounter someone who doesn't know Tim Ferriss's name because he's
That's
like,
weird, right?
yes, and he's such a hero to me.
Yeah,
And my husband and I bonded when we first met over Tim Ferriss and our
right.
love of 4 Hour Work Week. And so it's really funny when I meet somebody out in the wild or encounter and they're like, who? And it just blows my mind because for so many of us for over 10 years, he's been this beacon of
Yeah.
information and tools
Jeez.
and systems. And
And not like a
um,
normal, did you listen to him over the pandemic? Talking to his buddy Kevin Rose or talking to,
I haven't listened to that one yet, but thank you. I'm going to cue that up next.
I think he talked to Noah Kagan. Was it Noah? Maybe it was
Huh.
his other buddy's name, the VC that started WordPress,
Oh, Matt Mullenweg?
Matt Mullenweg. So I think he talked to him or DACA. I can't remember, but he has a lot of anxiety
Yeah.
and some of it was around money, right? Because he's like, it's kind of like that high level thing where it's like he was a big investor in Uber in the sense that he was an early guy
Oh,
and
yes, I might have
had
heard this
stock and he was
episode.
like, should I have dumped
Yes.
it? And
Yeah.
he's the anti-hero in some ways. It's like he's not your normal like tech bro in a sense. He's like he's a hacker in the end. Like he's just like
Yeah.
hacking life. So it's interesting that if he can be such a big audience and yet not be known.
I know,
Holy
but
grail.
he probably already has a full plate. Like I love conversations. He said he started writing a book on saying no and then he
Oh,
stopped it for some reason.
he said
I
no to
wish
his
he
no.
would have written that book because I think at that level, that's what I would struggle with is saying no. Is
Yeah.
actually so many good opportunities and not knowing which ones to actually take that aren't great. They're just good requests, good emails. I mean, I think that would get very overwhelming.
I think for me, that's where, you have the tyranny of ideas, um, which is as evil as the tyranny of bureaucracy, because you get mired down in both. And so that's why I really just came up with a vehicle to lump all that under, which is Founders Pack.
Yeah.
So the Form Your Own Pack and Founders Pack is that thing where I can do those things without doing those things. So that was
Totally.
kind of the idea of that, to sideload it. And then it's like, be disciplined in this thing that has wheels. Maybe you don't always love the parts of it, but you're really good at it. And
Yeah.
then, so there's like 3 of those things then, which was, I have a side hustle in hockey that would love to be more than that. Sports is screwed, so good timing.
Right.
I've got my main business, which Automate and Grow is part of, right? It's the tagline and what I actually do. And then there's this thing that I can lump everything else under. And for me, that was a real great way to organize it all. And then I know you're a big Evernote user. I'm a big Trello user. And I was like, why is this
I
junk
use
in
Asana
my
for,
head?
yeah.
Well, what I did is I created a Trello board for everything,
Yeah.
like every idea. And then it's just like, there's really just the 3 that I care about. There's all the client projects that are in the
Yeah.
one silo, and I include a lot of people in that. But it was amazing. And it dumped everything out of my brain. And then I could operationalize things, really just like focus on 1 or 2 things and not getting confused. And again, it was like a system for me not to get stuck, but anyways, going back to the niche thing, I think my answer to that was I've been really niche in my business the last 6 months, and it's paid off for sure. Like I'm back to a point where I can see there's growth and opportunity. Automate and Grow is part of that. I think from a content point of view, the podcast, I don't feel like changing that much, but I'm going to augment it, which is I'm going to do this other thing where I demo software, I meet founders, and I talk about tools specifically. So that's kind of my approach to it. Build the YouTube channel up on more than just the interviews and the connections. Because I think the reality is I have a body of people like you that, we're friends now. You have great ideas. I learn from you when I talk. And that's what we all need to do to power all the other stuff.
Absolutely. I love that idea. I love the idea of augmenting, not replacing. And even sometimes, isn't that how a pivot even starts? Is that what you're doing, in my lingo, I would call it your pivot portfolio, that you are diversifying your pivot portfolio, but you have your core 3, let's say. And then always those creative projects that are the augmented piece can become something more, or they can stay on the side. But the only way to know is to try and to start doing it in small batches and then see organically where it takes you. I think a big mistake a lot of people make is they think they need to know if something's going to work before they start.
That's where you get
and
screwed
that's just
up.
not
You're like, am I
possible.
wasting my time? Is the worst thing you can say to yourself.
Right.
Asking yourself that question.
Yeah, and I love back to Tim Ferriss. I mean, he really put it well with his podcast, and he said, would this thing be intrinsically valuable and rewarding no matter the outcome? And he was going to do 6 episodes to start. And he said, what will I gain from those 6 episodes? And I feel the same way, that even if my podcast had 0 listeners, it's so rewarding. It's so priceless. The people, the connections I've made, the thinking that it forces me to do in a way,
Right.
especially when I was doing daily. There are so many innumerable benefits that have nothing to do with the metrics.
Totally.
And it's one of those things. And so you can't really know. And to even now to discount, let's say someone's thinking of starting a podcast and say, oh, it's oversaturated already, it's too late. But that's only gauging on one very narrow set of criteria.
That goes to the 0 to 1 conversation with
Yes.
Peter Thiel, because this is the ultimate expression of your monopoly. Like, who's going to do Pivot?
Well, Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway.
Never heard of them.
Are you joking now?
No, I know who they are. I don't listen.
Okay. Well, because
I don't.
This is crazy.
Unless they come on my podcast, what do I care?
Like I had Pivot, the podcast and the book, but certainly the podcast since 2015. And then 2018, when I saw that Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway, who just and they have Vox behind them. And
oh my God, which is
oh my gosh,
worst,
so I've just
by the
watched
way. Vox should
their
go
podcast.
and burn. Vox, you heard it here first. Just go away.
That is so funny. And then New York Magazine bought Vox, right?
Of course they did.
Yeah.
Which is actually
so funny. I love how opinionated you are about this.
I personally think that New York Magazine probably drops an IQ point now.
That is so funny. Or is it the other way around? Did Vox buy New York Magazine?
What's the difference? I mean,
really
what used to be great is Vice, and now Vice is junk. It's like, what?
I don't even.
Stop.
I'm nowhere on the Vice train.
Anyway, it was funny because we met those guys a long, long time ago. They're from Montreal.
Yeah. Oh, I read about their debaucherous early days.
We saw it. Was like, these guys are burnouts.
Oh my God. I read Merchants of Truth, which was the story of BuzzFeed, Vice, New York Times, and Washington Post. It was very interesting from kind of an industry insider. And the the Vice crew just sounded like complete chaos. If you want to talk chaos, Baelish style,
crazy,
debauched chaos. That's Vice early days. Yeah.
And now it's almost like they've gone this other weird way. And you can see the guys that were originally, like, what's the one? Gavin, he's out.
And Smith.
Yeah.
Or no, it's not Smith.
The guy that Shane Smith still owns. He owns like 20% of it still. He's still got a lot in it. I really like him as what he does. But it's just like
I liked him.
There's an agenda.
I liked seeing his interview style. And then once I learned more about the background and the origin story, I was like,
oh, they were maniacs.
Yeah, it was very misogynistic.
We knew them, and they were crazy.
Yeah, Yeah. So
Yeah.
that culture, but on the pivot now there's this competing show that's super well funded and at the top of the
Yeah.
charts. And it's been really crazy to kind of watch that happen. And they trademarked the word pivot as a podcast, which mine was there for years prior, but they just got to the trademark first. I didn't even think you
Interesting.
could trademark a word
I
like
have an
pivot,
interesting
certainly
story
not
I
for a
can't talk about on
podcast.
the podcast.
Okay, well, another
Talk
time.
offline, but I kind of went through
Yeah,
that with something.
it's tough. And it's like, do you want to spend your energy fighting this? And, in general, I always espouse a rising tide lifts all boats, the abundance mindset and not having a scarcity mindset. I also think focusing on the competition is already a mistake because
For
it
sure.
just saps your energy and it's just be better. And you want to talk about trend spotting when they hijacked pivot, there is a part of me that it's like, well, then it must not be my thing in a way.
Break
I'm
your
not going to give
flight.
up that easily, but I also want to say, well, then what is next? Because I already
I wouldn't
have
I
been thinking
wouldn't
about
give that
this.
up. Who has it first?
I had it first,
Well,
but
so there's two issues. Who's more famous? This
they
is
are.
this is okay, so they're more famous, but you had it first.
And who
You
wrote the
gotta
book?
well, this is my point. You own that enough that you can cause enough grief for these guys because you should.
I thought about it and then I just
Don't
thought, you know
even
what?
think about it.
We're so
Do it.
different though. We're so different. I talk about heart-based business. We're very different
Oh,
and it does motivate me. Going back to, it's funny to talk about this. I love that we're getting into all this because
they
it's just the
stabbed you
nitty
in the
gritty.
heart. Come on.
It did. It was a stab in the heart, in the gut.
That's what I'm saying. Fight back.
I just,
It's a hard road if you go that way, but it's like easy to fold and walk, but you have something legitimate.
but it challenges me to say, well, what am I doing really? And who is it really for? And I get kind of excited to think
Yeah.
about maybe this is a sign to be more specific and get clearer on exactly what I love. And what's so funny about having this conversation with you in particular, Michael,
I'm a
is the
maniac.
one thing I get the most feedback on from friends and mentors, friendtors as I call them, is Jenny, how do you think in systems? Teach me how to think like you do. Or I know you'll have a system for this. I know you'll have a process or a
Mhm.
template. And there's a part of me that would have a lot of fun doing a podcast, sort of really zoned in on this thing that I love. Um, but I get
Are you
insecure.
proposing a merger?
No, I'm just saying
Do
it's
you
cool to
want to
see
be a
you doing
co-host
it.
of the Automate and Grow podcast?
I'll co-host